Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of System Link, a combination live podcast and gameplay stream where I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Mike Hazelton from the Xbox Guide. Mike, how you doing on this very, very complex and complicated week that we've had in the gaming space? How are you feeling right now coming into this second episode?
Yeah, pretty good. It's been a crazy week. Stuff coming out all the time, more and more kind of detail. And yeah, just looking forward to discussing it.
Yeah, well, let's get straight in because the big news this week has been what dropped yesterday. Xbox's announcement that they're shutting 4 of their Bethesda-owned studios. The biggest one, probably the most egregious that I think a lot of people are reacting negatively to, is the shutdown of Tango Gameworks, developers behind Evil Within, Hi-Fi Rush, and Ghostwire Tokyo. I think for a lot of people, potentially Hi-Fi Rush was the biggest sort of, jarring aspect of the decision because of how well received that was, both critically and in terms of wider player sentiment. I understand the need for fiscal results. I totally understand. I'm not so naive to the business side of things that you then look at it and go, well, there has to be some kind of monetary motivation behind this. They're looking perhaps at what they've got in their pipeline, seeing the player counts and the return from that game, and they just can't reconcile the investment. They just can't work that out. What I struggle so much with is how inconsistent this messaging has been when they have been making such great, going to such great lengths to sort of say, well, we're trying to cultivate the Japanese development scene. We're trying to get those studios on side. And yet here we are with them shutting their only main Japanese studio in first party. I just cannot reconcile how that works.
Yeah, this is a problem I have. And similar to when PlayStation shut a couple recently, all the noises from Microsoft were that they were so happy with Hi-Fi Rush, and the performance of Tango, and we had similarly with Arcane, even though obviously Redfall performed badly and was critically badly received, they were still making loads of positive noises about them, and I just hate that stuff. I want them to be honest about it. When they got rid of all the Activision like excess staff, I don't know why they didn't do this at the same time. Why have the Redfall team working on Redfall DLC constantly since the game came out, and then it's just like a year of their careers wasted, a year of finances wasted. It's I'd love to know when this decision got made, because all the noises coming out of Xbox were that something like this wasn't going to happen until like very recently.
This is something where like you say, that the timing of that is really key, because then if that was something we were aware of, we knew kind of publicly when that trigger was pulled, you then can't help but look back at some of perhaps what ends up being false sincerity. Some things where they talk about, the fact that Hi-Fi Rush won a BAFTA at the end of last year.
Well, and they ported it.
Yeah,
I don't think it's on Switch yet, is it? So they're still... Well, I don't know what's happening with that, whether that's still going to come to Switch or not. But it's all like, we want everyone to as many people as possible to experience these games. And obviously, I think we're all aware that there was an undercurrent to that of they need to get more out of the game financially. But that also makes you worry about Obsidian, because there's 2 Obsidian games, Grounded and Pentiment, that have been ported. Are Obsidian at risk? Because the game that they've pushed those games, Rare, I think, could be at risk because they haven't produced much for a long time. Sea of Thieves is obviously really critically acclaimed, and it seems to be doing good numbers on PlayStation. But at the same time, that's a big studio that's only had one game in the last however many years that is. So I would worry about some of the other studios. I think there's also concern about Ninja Theory because they've staffed up, and the budget for Hellblade 2, which we're going to talk about in a bit, is I think quite substantially increased, and there's already like negativity about the game coming out. So
well, yeah, exactly. And actually, you've kind of raised a good point there about Obsidian, which is that I would look at the fact that, you know, Game Pass as a model was supposed to cultivate the kind of experiences that Pentiment would offer. Those sort of smaller spin-off teams doing something experimental and then being able to release it without the pressure of it needing to hit some arbitrary sales target in terms of like raw, hard copies sold. Game Pass was supposed to facilitate that. That was always the pitch, is that the idea is it took away the stress and the pressure, both financially and logistically, on developers. They could let creativity lead the charge of their process. And what you have a situation now is that a team like Tango, which, by the way, on paper should never have made Hi-Fi Rush. If you look at the pedigree of their work, everything else pointed to either survival horror or some element of kind of, you know, like a supernatural or slightly more horror-based focus for their titles. It was a complete left field move from them, and really exciting because of it. Taking a team that's so focused on mechanics and gameplay and applying that to a whole new genre. Game Pass as a concept was sold as the idea that developers would be then freed up to use those extra resources you get from a consistent subscription to fund those smaller titles, which in turn gives them more content to feed into their subscription service. That's the part that I'm really having trouble wrapping my head around. I can't, for the life of me, understand why they would take away one of the primary drivers of that original content for Game Pass.
Yeah, and you can't have it both ways. You can't say, oh, you're free to do your own thing, and then when the game, like Hi-Fi Rush, critically acclaimed, they probably couldn't have done any better with that, but maybe hasn't got the results. They need to, if it is all about revenue, then they need to say, we don't want you making that game. We want you making an FPS or a live
Evil Within
service
3 or something. You know, they go with that.
Yeah. It's they need to sort that out, because Phil has been very hands off, and he always says like we want them to make the games they're passionate about and stuff. The teams are going to start thinking, we can't make the games we're passionate about. Mm-hmm. We've got to make something that will get results. And it seems like they're just going to focus on COD and the massive revenue generating games at the expense of all the smaller games, which was not, like you say, that was not the Game Pass. The point of Game Pass isn't to be able to play Call of Duty for free. It's to be able to play like 100 different indie games and like AA games and
Absolutely.
stuff, as well as a few big ones.
But that's the issue there too, isn't it? Is that if you're Bethesda now, do they look at that and go, well, the only franchises you care about are Doom, Fallout, and Elder Scrolls? That they do things that matter in terms of like long-term growth and viability. And that's a really tricky position for those creative teams to be left in, because are they going to end up like Roundhouse was? They end up being a support studio or being folded back into another dev. Yeah.
There's a few like Double Fine. I'd be worried if I was Double Fine, because they produce very like critically acclaimed games that don't sell. People love them as a studio, like they love Tango, but Microsoft have bought these studios, these kind of quirky studios that I think importantly produce better quality games than Xbox first party traditionally have been, which was important because, you know, Hi-Fi Rush is one of the best first party games for a long time on Xbox.
Yeah. And something that was so identifiable as being, because it was shadow dropped as well, wasn't it, at the developer direct. Yeah. They built so much around that title that you just again go, well, if you're gonna invest so much time and your advertising space on something like that, to then just pull out the rug a year later.
People like, this is a new mascot for Xbox. But the shadow drop in itself was odd. Like, it was nice, but also not the best way to like hype the game and probably make as much money as possible from it. My worry about Game Pass specifically is now that they've the way they're trying to grow Game Pass is acquiring studios basically to have all these first party games on Game Pass. It used to be that if you're a third party studio, you sign a deal with Microsoft where they pay you to have your game on Game Pass. So you'd know before your game even came out, you're going to make X amount of money back and probably secured your studio's future, or you're likely to make a profit on the game or something, or you wouldn't sign that deal. But first party, there isn't that. Obviously, there isn't that in place. You're not getting any revenue from the game. Oh well, obviously you're not getting much revenue from the game because it's going straight onto Game Pass. And then so Phil or whoever looks at it after 6 months and says, "You haven't made your money back." Like, what metric is that? How are they supposed to make their money back?
Yeah, it's
how are they
like
judging success?
Yeah, they're trying to have their cake and eat it too, right? They're trying to say that, well, we don't have to report numbers for this game in terms of raw sales, because that metric doesn't count for us. We're not solely concerned about number of digital or physical copies sold of something. We're looking at subscriber count. It's all about subscriber count. Who's now buying into that ecosystem in a different way? So if you, on the one hand, de-emphasize the importance of dollar sales, I don't feel like they then have the right to then justify the closure of a studio by saying, well, we're reallocating resources and we're looking at the best ways to invest in our studios, because they're the ones that have changed the goalposts. They're the ones that have said, hey, don't worry, let your creativity be the thing that drives the creation of a project. And yet it seems to be that if it doesn't have some kind of traditional sales success, despite the fact that it's in Game Pass day one, that seems to be then motivating them to shut these places down. Which is...
Well, yeah. Like, if Hi-Fi Rush had done big numbers on PlayStation, presumably they would have kept Tango open. I don't know. Is that what they were trying with that?
Maybe that's also the question too, is when you look at the quality of that game, what it represented to the brand, and like you mentioned, the idea of it being a new mascot, what it potentially could have become in the future with a sequel or a multi-platform release across, other platforms beyond Xbox. You then go, what would it have needed to have done to survive? That's, I think, which we're never going to get that clarity. There's never going to be that level of honesty.
No.
But what do these studios, particularly studios like Tango, what would they have had to have done to avoid this culling? And that's the thing that is almost the ultimate question that can never be answered.
I remember when they announced Hi-Fi Rush, the lead designer, or whoever, who was a Western guy, was like, I'm so thankful that they've given me the chance to develop kind of this more Western game at a Japanese studio. But I think if they'd have said to him at the time, if this game doesn't sell, we're going to shut Tango down, they would not have made that game.
No, not at all.
They would have made Evil Within 3, and it would have done better and kept them open.
From what I understand is, I think Hi-Fi Rush was in development for a while. That was not a Pentiment style spun-off game with a small team. That was Tango Gameworks making Hi-Fi Rush. That was their singular focus after Ghostwire Tokyo had already been kind of put together and shipped. So I don't think it was a quick, simple turnaround. It was something that really, I think, was their big bet. Here's our new IP. Here's something we know that is going to be revealed at a developer direct, the first time that format had ever been used by Microsoft. It was treated like an event. And that's where I think perhaps this comes across as being quite callous from them. Very much, I also think, and this is something I wanted to ask your opinion on, do we think this was a Microsoft mandate? That they actually, from the top down, mandated that they need to trim here and cut this?
I think they will undoubtedly have said your the margins are too small, or the costs are too high at the moment, so you need to cut. But then there's no way that it's not, in my opinion, it can't be anyone except for Phil Spencer who is deciding which studios to. It certainly shouldn't be Matt Booty making those decisions. I know it's probably his remit, but the email he sent as well was bad. I don't know. Have a look at it. It was pretty callous. He kind of said the right stuff, but it was very matter of fact. We're getting rid of these teams.
I saw something from Aaron Greenberg where he mentioned someone sort of, I think, was asking similar question to us about what sort of success would Hellblade have needed, or not Hellblade, sorry, Hi-Fi Rush. What would that have needed in order to have avoided this problem? and he wrote back to this person on Twitter saying, well, it hit all of our internal targets commercially, it was received critically really well, and obviously was award-winning. And then, therefore, logically, I couldn't help but then sit there and just be like, well, then what the hell else were they supposed to do?
He didn't answer, he didn't say
no.
What the...
No.
And this is another one of those situations, like we had with the games going to PlayStation. It's deathly quiet from Phil Spencer, and it needs to not. This is what he's here for. He needs to come out and be, because people still do respect his opinion, and I think if the PR and the messaging is still so bad. And they did that business update, and it was really bad. And this, rather than trying to sneak it out while PlayStation are fucking up the Helldivers stuff, like, have Phil on camera talking people through why the decision's been made, and everyone would have so much more respect for the decision-making process than just leaking an email. There's still been no statement from anyone except for Tango themselves and Arcane.
Also because they pitched that Xbox business update as some huge, let's really address the future of our company and the creative vision. Turned out to be a glorified podcast that was all pre-recorded with all preset questions. And again, it just felt like poorly managed damage control, which I feel like this is partly too, because look at the timing. Only a week after they announced the Xbox showcase for June, with that obviously Call of Duty redacted direct afterwards. Great. I mean, the response to that was it's that classic Xbox, one step forward, 8 back. They have that was a great moment, and then they undid all that goodwill.
Why not do it with the Activision cuts? I don't understand.
Because they must.
Because then it gets lost in the noise of thousands of people having cuts, rather than doing it in 2 separate batches. And we're getting close now to June. People are still going to be thinking about this.
Yeah.
I don't know if they hoped that give it a month and people will have forgotten, but this has gone down so badly with like content creators and studios, like the guy doing Blade at Arcane Leon, like publicly saying it's shit.
Which is unusual.
What are they going to do with him now?
Yeah, that's very unusual for a first-party studio to be commenting on things like that within their ecosystem. I mean, let's address Arcane for a minute. They made Redfall. Redfall was not in any way the game that it should have been. There's all kinds of reports that we've seen online about that being mismanaged, pitched perhaps beyond what Arcane Austin were capable of producing, turning it into more of a live service multiplayer game when their history was sort of realistic sim, sort of single player games. There's all kinds of things you can unpack from that, but I do think as well, if you're going to have a team like that which has delivered things like Prey, and they've delivered some great stuff in the past, you have one misstep and then it's pulled the plug. With all the promises of the DLC, new characters, etc., like you said, the year spent definitely working on it. They weren't shut down 6 months ago. They were still working on that stuff with the expectation this year.
We had some decent patches. I was reading that the offline mode is basically ready to go, because they had criticism for you not being able to play it offline, and that's basically ready. But that's obviously not going to go out, which isn't good for game preservation. And who's to blame for Redfall? Because I remember Phil again, I think, saying that they did playtests and it was scoring high in playtests. So they'll have fed back to Arcane and said, "Yeah, great, looks great." He will have played it at some stage and would have said it's great. Can't wait for it to launch.
And you remember that with the whole, we're not going to launch with a 60 frames per second performance option. I do think Starfield suffered a little bit, which I think they've course corrected that very quickly. That 60 frames per second mode that's coming in the May update.
Yeah,
that was a quick.
It's not quick. Well, it's still a year, isn't it? Almost.
Yes, I mean, when I say quick, I don't mean relative to like release day, but that took forever for them to actually like talk about what was happening with Redfall. Yeah. At least with Starfield, they've got it within the first, before Shattered Space, before that big DLC drop, at least they've addressed the performance side of things. And just jumping into chat really quickly, Plugs I'll get mentioning slightly off topic, noticing the Simpsons Hit and Run and Driver 3 in the background. So you've got, I swapped this way. I swapped out my background game. Obviously, you've clocked as well, Mike, with Driver 3. One of our favourite games, actually, I think, on the original Xbox.
Yeah, it had a movie editor
Yeah,
mode.
that was so good. Directing the shooting from the tire view and doing all those camera shots in the replay editor. Such great fun. Plugsucker also coming in saying releasing games unfinished, then slowly finishing them with updates does seem to be a trend right now. And I think that's fair. I think that's a fair point, which is that you sort of get it out to hit an arbitrary date and then hope that your community is as loyal enough to stick with you through future iteration.
I think it's particularly bad from Xbox compared to PlayStation. Obviously, third parties are notoriously bad for it, but I think Sony generally seem to have a better quality control in general on their games. I wanted to ask you, compared to the 4 games stuff that we had over kind of winter going to PlayStation, how much of a hit is this, like, reputational hit? Because I've certainly seen a lot more people on like Twitter saying all the knee-jerk stuff. I've cancelled Game Pass, all that stuff. But it does seem to be
put that aside. That part, true knee-jerk. But I agree with you that there isn't a lot of people, the usual suspects, jumping to the defence of it.
Yeah, well, it's tough to Tango. Is indefensible, really.
But they normally find a way. Like, historically, we've seen some pretty bad moves and seen the sort of very passionate, bleeding green Xbox fanboys and content creators sort of leaning, some way to find a positive outcome from that.
The Activision stuff, the Activision cuts were like, they've taken a studio on, there's going to be cuts where there's people in the same roles at existing first party that are at Activision. But Bethesda, they've had Bethesda for long enough now that these aren't, and obviously they've shut entire studios, so these aren't, it's not trimming the fat. It's they don't think Tango can make profit for them.
Yeah, exactly. Same with Arcane Austin, right? Similar approach. That's also the thing I'm really struggling with, is when they were so willing to have Toys for Bob, say, spin off independently, and then Microsoft inked a deal with them for their next game. And that's, by the way, that's not rumoured. Toys for Bob have now announced that their first new title is in partnership with Xbox. Probably Spyro. Probably, right? But you've got them willing to make those deals. I don't know why, when you're trying so desperately to win over that market, that you don't try and let Tango give them the opportunity to be invested in elsewhere and spin off independently, rather than just shut down fire. It's the Embracer approach, isn't it? At least Embracer,
I was going to say,
at least Embracer sold Gearbox back to 2K, where they'd worked with them previously as a publisher, and thankfully Saber Interactive, the World War Z and Space Marine developer, they've also been bought out and allowed to continue. So those studios, as much as there's the inherent risk of them now being independent, they've at least been able to retain their identity and who they are. And actually, David makes a good point here. There is history of Microsoft making deals. We've seen them do it to secure third-party releases on Game Pass. We've seen them do it to secure exclusives, second-party exclusives, in many, many instances. And it's not like they're struggling for cash, which is where, again, this sort of Microsoft posting their record profits and then stating fiscal conservatism as the reason why they want to make sure these studios are trimmed back. It's just odd.
I can guarantee if they hadn't have acquired Activision, they wouldn't be getting rid of these two.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I know it's more than 2 studios, but the 2 big studios that have gone, because now they've got all this Activision stuff. Call of Duty's making billions. Call of Duty Mobile's making shitloads. I think they just, what's the point in having Tango? That even if they make a profit, it's going to be small change compared to what Call of Duty does. Let's just focus on Call of Duty. It's like the EA problem. Put all the studios on one game, because why would you? What's the point?
Because if it's purely a metric of financial return that they're interested in, then you focus on the things that give you that. And that would be Bethesda's big franchises, Fallout, which right now is the hotness with the Prime show, Starfield, Elder Scrolls. You focus on those things. I'd be worried about id Software. I'm worried about them.
I'm there's very few that I wouldn't be worried about.
Right.
And just I know I probably want to move on, but just it's the creativity that's going to suffer. And this is why I think it's a really recent decision, because I don't think you make Indiana Jones because Indiana Jones isn't guaranteed to be a hit.
No, not at all.
Well, whatever you think, I don't think the IP is even strong enough to guarantee it's a hit.
No, it's just that what they've set up is, I think they've picked a good developer for Lucasfilm Games to partner with. Machine Games being That's a good play, but I agree, the IP is not a guaranteed win at all.
But and I also don't think their games have particularly done what will have done great numbers historically. And then Blade also, I don't think necessarily that has broad appeal in the same way that if you did a new Dishonored game, or if you had Arcane Austin do a new Prey game or something. I know we don't just want to see sequels, but if all you're asking for is a revenue return, then I think that's what teams will feel like they have to do instead of trying this new stuff.
Which just again flies in the face of what Game Pass was supposed to create, an opportunity for these studios to focus on the things they wanted to make. And also, if you want to grow your subscription, give people reasons to subscribe. You've got to be feeding that content and those day one releases with diverse, creative and different experiences. They're not going to see some enormous increase when Call of Duty goes into Game Pass. It will move the needle, but it's not going to be the kind of thing where if you suddenly have Obsidian making another original IP. I saw someone mention in the chat earlier how popular Grounded was and how well received that was. That existed because Game Pass made it so. I really believe that. I don't think that game would have existed without that subscription model supporting it. And when you see the number of players and now obviously the other console ports coming out, that validates their approach. Creativity feeds the subscription, which keeps people invested and makes them more willing to keep subscribing in the future.
I think potentially Obsidian are quite clever. I feel like Grounded would have been a pretty low budget game. And potentially, I mean, I'm just pulling numbers out of thin air, but I could see a world where that sold better than Hi-Fi Rush.
Sure. Which
probably cost considerably more to make.
Absolutely. And look, just going into the chat, talking about the value of games, Game Pass makes things viable. Plugsocket mentioning here, $70 for Modern Warfare 3. It's a huge ask. So the fact that you've got that as a different option through Game Pass, they're still going to make their money on other platforms. I
do think Game Pass is a different audience, like it's stagnating apparently, or it's not increasing very much. So potentially you'll get new people in for Call of Duty, but if you lose the variety that's in Game Pass by focusing on these few tentpole titles, then you'll start to lose that subscription. Because I don't care about Call of Duty personally. If I didn't have the stuff that I'm currently using Game Pass for, and I just had Call of Duty and a few other big games that I've learned to live without because I don't want to pay 70 quid for them.
Precisely.
Then I won't subscribe, and I think you'll start to lose the core of the Game Pass audience. Which is the thing
that you'll see the spike of interest in terms of subscription when a big title like Call of Duty eventually drops in there, but then a gradual decline as people realise that the experiences they were looking for and the reasons why. I know I certainly use Game Pass, which has been to diversify my gaming, experience new things with none of the risk. That's again the great benefit to consumer, is that we don't have to invest so much initially. We can try new stuff and push the envelope a little bit in terms of our comfort zone and what we're into. We get to try new stuff. And that's where, looking on here, David mentioning, I love Grounded. It's such a good game, and Game Pass really supported it to build what it is now. That is something that very much has been at the core of what Game Pass is. And you take away studios like Tango and Arcane, Austin, I think they are, again, another big loss within that. You take those teams away, you risk, I think, reducing the number of reasons why someone would want to take that step and buy into that ecosystem. And that's, I think, fundamentally the problem they now face.
Do you think that the acquisitions, especially Activision, are not about Game Pass? The acquisition is more for Microsoft to become this dominating publisher. I wonder if the Activision acquisition is more just they don't care about Game Pass. They're actually they just want the revenue. And in fact, without Game Pass, the Activision acquisition makes a lot more sense.
Sure,
because you get a lot more revenue.
Yeah, I wonder if it's to again try and have their cake and eat it too, to show the game division, which we saw the recent quarter stats when they posted them up, being like this incredible increase, and they had to do the caveat. Since the acquisition of Activision Blizzard, they've shown massive percentage increase in revenue, which is all Microsoft are going to care about. They're going to want to see that revenue go up. I think, if anything, Game Pass will be good for their legacy content. They looked at that purchase as, look at all this IP we now own, look at all these backwards compatible games we can now release into Game Pass, but it's actually newer installments in Call of Duty and World of Warcraft. That's what's going to bring them their revenue, which is ultimately the thing that Microsoft really care about. I think that's going to be their focus. If it weren't for Game Pass, I would have never played Persona and probably got into the series. Exactly. Something that pushed your taste out of its comfort zone and you tried something different. And that's what Hi-Fi Rush represented. That's what Tango, I thought the promise of them represented. I was really actually, as much as I'm excited for Toys for Bob and the fact that, they're the Crash Bandicoot developers, as much as I'm excited for them to go independent, that is a huge loss to Xbox. That's a huge value proposition for me personally of Xbox buying Activision was Toys for Bob. And they're now an independent team. Yes, they've done a deal, as we've seen them do, but that was a big reason why I was excited behind that. It wasn't for COD. It was for studios like Toys for Bob.
A huge loss for you, but not for Microsoft, apparently.
Not for the bottom line. And that's where, again, maybe that's where the anger and the frustration that we've seen in that wider sentiment directed about Tango and Arcane has been because it's not been a huge loss for Microsoft. They've been quite sort of, we said it best already, kind of callous in their approach and the way they handle those conversations. People, I think, feeling just burned by them. It's just another bad move in a year of mismanagement, cutbacks across the industry. It's just the latest hammer blow. It just stung particularly because of the timing, the poor messaging around it, and the sort of, what? Of all teams that you're going to trim?
Yeah.
You're going to look at a team like that? It's bizarre.
And it is the first Microsoft move that's been like Embracer level of shit. This is really bad. This is like, I don't think any of the other publishers have done anything to this extent that looks this weird. Doesn't make sense to fans. Like loads of the Embracer stuff. It's like, why the hell are you shutting those studios?
Yeah,
we couldn't wait for the games they're working on. It's one of those cases.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to build on that, just to continue the slightly messy and, quite frankly, train-derailed process that Microsoft are going through right now, we have a first-party Xbox game launching within the next 2 weeks. And that game is Hellblade 2. And yet, almost radio silence that we see from Microsoft first party, from their social media, from their complete absence of any kind of meaningful advertising push. And this game is, it's probably one of the best looking current gen titles that we have seen since this gen started. If you're just looking at pure tech, narrative ambition, this should be being screamed from the rooftops. I look at this stacks up with the best of what Sony have put out for me in terms of production value and ambition. Not trying to jump the gun and say it's going to be a 9, 10 out of 10, but certainly in terms of the production value and quality of the output, this to me strikes me as something that would be akin to a Naughty Dog release or a Guerrilla Games release like with Horizon. And yet there's nothing. And it's going to be a day one title. We saw the developer direct. It had a decent feature in there. That's where the release date of May was revealed. But that's it. What is the thinking here? Or rather, what is perhaps the absence of thinking going on at Microsoft right now? Why are we just not seeing a meaningful push for a game this big?
I don't get it. You put a 30-second trailer of this on like primetime TV or on the streaming apps, and it will get traction and it will get relatively mass appeal because it's so filmic. People will just lap it up, and it's the first game, like you say, that I think can really, other than something like Starfield, but it can really appeal to that core PlayStation audience. Who haven't had a game in this style that's like a familiar PlayStation kind of genre. They haven't had a game like that for a little while now. So I don't know what they're thinking, and it's worrying. Like, do they know that it's not going to do the numbers, so they're not bothering to? It's really weird. It's like they're not confident. I don't understand it at all. Because it looks great. It like I can't see it getting less than like 8.
Agreed.
I'd be really surprised.
To not have confidence in a developer like Ninja Theory does not make any sense to me. And yet, what we see publicly being shared by Aaron Greenberg, one of the Xbox execs. We have this tweet that he put out. I think this was a couple of days ago, or maybe the end of last week. just going to read you exactly the wording of this because, again, it is sort of fascinating sort of marketing guff. Had a great review with the team leading our big global and regional marketing plans to support Senua's Saga Hellblade 2. It all starts next week as we optimise leading up to launch and beyond. So many fun creative plans to name a few, including a global paid media campaign, cinema launch programme, out-of-home advertising, brand partnerships, and a special activation from Iceland. I have never, in all of my days covering games industry stuff, from the website we started when we were teenagers, going into obviously what we're doing now across thatHITBOX, Xbox Guide, and Burly Media, I have never seen an executive sort of say, don't worry, we will advertise it, without actually advertising the game. They've just, hell, it's going to launch on May 21st.
Global, whatever it was,
going to do.
Global marketing activation. Like that's literally his job. That's the absolute minimum you would expect from a first party release. It's basically running ads internationally. The cinema stuff, you could have run ads for this, trailers for this in the cinema like 6 months ago with a 2024 date, vague 2024 date, and it would have got people hyped for it. I don't understand. They really have to cut back that much that they can't advertise the games? It's so counterproductive. It must be a belt tightening thing rather than Aaron Greenberg thinks there's no point in advertising until 3 weeks before it comes out.
Yeah, or they're worried about the quality of the outcome. You know, it's bizarre because also on top of this, I think this is exactly the kind of game where someone would go, I could get that for like a £8-9 a month sub. I could get access to this. You would look at that and go, holy shit, that's going to be Game Pass day one. This would absolutely be a driver of content, of subscription, subscription pickup by people actually wanting to grab this via Game Pass.
And literally, you'd only need to pay for 1 month because it's a short game, 6 to 8 hours, I think. So yeah, and you could probably, I'm sure they're still doing the £1 a month thing on Game Pass. So like, yeah, just pay a quid, complete it.
It's nonsense to me. I mean, this is something where we've seen yet again an inability for Xbox to action their talk. They say a lot. They say they listen. They say they're willing to make change. We have seen massive change in the company since the Xbox One era to now. That can't be denied. Both the features that they've put out there, the services that they've offered, and the upgrades to things like Game Pass. But fundamentally, you are a game publisher. You have a first-party studio system now that is absolutely enormous in terms of its scope, numbers of developers working on games, and an audience ravenous to buy into that ecosystem. And yet you have a game which I think should be the big Xbox game of this year. I would put that, Hellblade 2, as a safer bet than Indiana Jones right now, for sure. I think Avowed is going to be great, but I don't think that has a mass appeal as a title. I think Hellblade 2 absolutely speaks to that audience, like you mentioned on PlayStation, and that would instantly make people want to consider jumping in, connecting with that, that subscription and giving it a go. And then they go, oh, I can get Starfield on here. I can play Forza. All the Halo games are on here. And then that's the whole purpose of it, right? Plug Socket says it best. All talk, never do. They're not practicing what they preach.
I think Xbox marketing has been weak for a long time. It's so US focused, whatever. They'll do ads during a Super Bowl, but you don't get anything in Europe, don't get anything worldwide. And it's very much, they run an ad, put an ad in the Super Bowl. And that's it. Compared to how it used to be in the Xbox 360 era, where they had the deal with Call of Duty before the PlayStation deal that has been running recently. Where all the trailers were Xbox branded, you had all this Call of Duty Xbox content, and all the there was so much localized marketing for Xbox 360. Understandably, it died off with Xbox One, but I don't know why they wouldn't be doing it now with Game Pass. You're not going to grow the Game Pass base if you don't advertise it. People still don't know what it is.
Well, for sure. And if you're talking about all these reports of it stagnating, well, the way you do that is you give people reasons to want it. And its content is king. There's a reason why Netflix have reached the point they have, is because they have secured their originals and continue to release them regularly. It's exactly the same model. It's just games take longer to make, right? So you have to then plan that out and have a studio infrastructure that supports that regular content. Where, oh, I don't know, games like Hi-Fi Rush and Obsidian's Pentiment fit beautifully into that system. Because then you have regular content and smaller games with a quicker turnaround while you're waiting for those big marquee releases. It's the pitch that they made. This isn't new information or an insight that we're sharing that Microsoft don't know. This is how they sold Game Pass to both the public and to developers as well. And that's where I'm getting fired up. This is what is so frustrating to me, because I don't understand the blind spot. I don't understand why they can't simply view the interest and the success and the engagement. When they talk about all this time about, look at number of... We care more about how many people are playing. No, you don't. Because otherwise you'd still have Tango Gameworks open.
Yeah, they want people to play games that can be monetized. I don't think they really care about... Unless someone is literally signing up to Game Pass to play that one game, I think they want you to play Sea of Thieves because it's monetized. I don't think they want you to play Grounded particularly. I don't think Grounded's monetized, is it?
Not particularly, no.
And also, yeah, I just the one thing when you mentioned Netflix is getting worse and worse value as time goes on, which is traditionally how these startups work. Like they start off and everyone's thinking this is fucking incredible, and they're losing loads of money. And then they change the model they increase the fees, they start putting ads in front of the content, and then Netflix starts to make a profit. Whereas Xbox it started off with not many games in Game Pass. It was obviously cheaper, but now they've acquired Activision. The value is insane, even at the increased subscription fee. Even if they increased it further, the value would still be insane. And then there's no way really they can row back from that. The subscription fee is going to reach a limit that they can't realistically go any higher, and so I think they're kind of digging themselves into a bit of a hole with the amount of content.
And it's catch-22 as well, isn't it? Because that you need new content to feed the subscription growth. That content then stagnates. You're going to either have people become disengaged and lose it, but as that subscription continues to bloat and get bigger and bigger, they might then have to offset that increased investment and cost by increasing the cost to consumer, which might then again cause disengagement and people to drop out of it. It's a really, really tricky cycle. For me, the solution is simple. Spread your releases with a regular cadence. Advertise the games that, quite frankly, people are desperate for you to shout about. And by having a regular, spread out cadence throughout each fiscal year, you then increase the chance that games like, for instance, like Call of Duty will still get their revenue and still hit where they want to hit. And then you get to what they claim to want, which is to have their cake and eat it too. Which they get to have the diversity and those little experiences whilst retaining people in Game Pass and securing the revenue from their big marquee titles. Spread out those releases and just stop cutting back the studios that are trying to do the thing that you've been saying publicly you want them to do.
Yeah, and they're struggling with spreading the releases out. It all just seems badly managed. The marketing's bad. The studio management is bad. Yep. I don't know what they're doing right at the moment. They're not doing other than acquiring.
Other than
the acquisitions they've done.
Why is it that we've got Hellblade in May, right, and then at the end of the year, Indiana Jones, Avowed, Ara, Shattered Space Expansion, and Starfield, Flight Sim as well, all within the space of 3 months? Make that make sense. Yearly release patterns shouldn't matter anymore. The idea of a summer drought, wait for the end of the year because that's when we get our sales success, shouldn't matter anymore because you've got your new release model. So
you've got Call of Duty, which is now a first-party title, competing with your other big releases at the end of the year.
All potentially
it's easy to avoid that now. Yeah,
just with a bit of actual planning and management. And speaking of dreadful management decisions, just keeping this train rolling. Hellblade 2 on Steam, the PSN signing, right? Now, this is another one of kind of a make it make sense moment, right? Where I cannot figure this out, right? So for anyone that doesn't know, Hellblade 2 launched simultaneously on Steam and PS5. It was the first new PS5 second-party game that was launching PC day and date. It did not require a PSN sign-in on Steam, right? Because they didn't require the subscription in order to play it, as you would expect. Then, 3 months after launch, Sony then patch it and say, in order to play this game, you need to have a PSN account, which is not available in every country, where Steam is available in additional places. So not only were certain people then locked out of being able to buy and or play the game, but they were forcing people who didn't need to use a PSN account to sign up for one. Now, I have no inherent problem with typing an email in and making an account for a game. So we can separate that first of all. But why are you putting a barrier to entry to arguably the great success story of your year when you've already tweeted that nothing else is going to be coming from Sony first party? They're all third-party partnerships or second-party exclusives. It just is nonsense, Mike. Make it make sense.
Yeah, literally the only problem for me is the regions. Look, the game launched in certain regions with the PSN thing. They then wouldn't be able to play the game.
Yeah,
which is just terrible. Like, they haven't thought that through at all. So it's that's the issue for me. Like you say, almost every single game that I play or want to play online, you have to create some stupid account for, and it's just you just deal with it. I think there's definitely a subset of the PC community who have just decided to take an issue with it, and it's popular to take an issue with it, so they're review bombing it and stuff. And they don't care about these regions that don't have PSN because they're not big gaming regions. But from a objective point of view, if you're releasing it in somewhere and then you're cutting support for that by introducing this stupid mechanic, that's not okay. So there's kind of two sides. I don't have a problem with them introducing the PSN stuff. There's been comments from the studio saying it was forced on them and stuff, which is obviously not very good to see. The studio head's extremely vocal, isn't he? Which is good and bad. But
sure, but I would always take the transparency. I know that Nintendo sometimes they make their wacky choices, but their CEO recently just said, Switch 2 announcements coming soon. It'll be in this fiscal year. Just won't be in the June Direct. Nintendo are actually very good at that, at being very explicit about the sort of timing of announcements. They make it very clear. They set the expectations appropriately. We're going to talk about games in the second half of 2024. Switch 2 announcement's going to come before March next year. So they are generally pretty good with that, even if some of the decision making is particularly wacky. Davo mentioned in the chat as well, studios really need to consider their player base before making decisions like that, especially if it causes people to lose access to play.
Yeah, I get the logic in terms of they can only ban people effectively if they've got a PSN account. That does make sense. Or the bans are more effective if they're banning people from PSN, and they can brick your PlayStation. Via PSN, so that makes sense. But it should have been there at launch, and they shouldn't have launched in those regions if they weren't going to be able to.
If they were going to then restrict that later, I saw someone on Twitter mention that it would actually been a really great way for them to get around this, where they make the PSN sign up optional, but they give you some free skins or a cape or something if you tie in your PSN account. Because the only advantage I can think for Sony doing this is then they have potentially another marketing opportunity. Another way for them to push people towards the PlayStation ecosystem. Surely that's the only benefit to them having an account, because crossplay was already handled in-game. There wasn't like most games that require an account, often it's because of a crossplay mandate. In order to do this, we have a unified account system that then brings the consoles and platforms together. The only thing I can think of as the advantage to them doing this is because it then allows them to kind of have a little toe dipped in their ecosystem. So why not make that optional? Incentivize it with a free skin or a free cape or piece of customization. Keep it as an optional thing so those regions that don't support PSN can still buy and play the game, and then you still get probably a decent influx of players from day one signing up to it. A sensible, common sense approach.
Does it have cross progression?
No.
I guess that not that PSN would allow that, but that's the only thing you get from a unified account, isn't it?
For sure.
I saw that the reason they didn't implement it was because of the server issues, which again makes sense. But there's that gap. They launched it in regions that didn't have PSN, so surely it wasn't something they just turned off because they wouldn't have even launched.
And also those servers have been pretty stable very soon after launch. So we're now in May. It came out in February. There was maybe tops a week where there were so many players. People were playing it. It wasn't like the servers were down. It's just that there was a couple moments where they had to take it down for maintenance. But predominantly, people were able to play that game when it came out. And to then step in and throw this into the mix 3 months after launch when it wasn't explicitly stated this was coming. It did feel like just sort of a weird overreach that they quickly course corrected. That's one thing again, to devil's advocate this, at least Sony came in and held their hands up and went, we didn't handle this right, let's step back and do this better.
And we haven't had that on the studio closures from Microsoft. We won't get it. I think we'll get something from Phil at some point, and he'll say, "I hear you guys. It's not great, and I get
Which
it."
will be it'll be like, "I hear you guys. Please look forward to the June showcase," and they'll just course correct it down to that. A June showcase, by the way, that we were hoping to see these studios make some stuff. Just unbelievable, really. But let's now switch out to finish off our System Link podcast section of tonight with some jolly vibes, Mike. This jolly vibes comes to us. We do desperately need them. This comes from a very wholesome, sweet-looking little indie game called Another Crab's Treasure. This has just launched into Game Pass and has launched on various platforms. It's a kind of Souls-like action game. It's got combat and enemy encounters that are very reminiscent of like Dark Souls and Bloodborne, but obviously presented in a very accessible, very sweet and wholesome graphical style. Thank you, by the way, Mike. Mike's handled all the B-roll for our episode this week and last week, and just great choice of a cinematic trailer for this game. Another Crab's Treasure, just the world's crabbiest Souls-like. I mean, come on, that's just delightful. This is something that I couldn't be happier is getting a Game Pass release. And to prove that Game Pass can work when done right, the developers had announced it's already sold 150,000 copies sold across all platforms, on top of the player count that have come through Game Pass, which is exactly what it's for. Cultivate smaller budget creative experiences and use Game Pass for people to have no barrier to entry and create discoverability and sales on other platforms. That is just the absolute best case scenario. And I can see here in chat just people saying, Crab Souls, great reference. Big Manny, heard of this. It's in my wish list, so I'll probably get it soon. Yeah, this is something that has been on my radar for a minute. And I'm thrilled to see a game like this and a studio like Aggro get the sales success and the recognition that comes with being both a multi-platform release and a Game Pass day one drop. Did you have any sort of association interests in this? Anything you were aware of it before it kind of dropped recently?
Purely from the aesthetics of it.
Yeah.
I would like the like you would say, the jolly vibes of it. It's totally the reason I would give it a go, because it's not probably a genre I would gravitate to. Certainly, for me to play a game like this, I'd normally have to put like hours and hours aside to get good at it. But I will try this out because it's on Game Pass, and I love the look at it, and I think that's, like you say, that's the perfect game for the platform.
For sure. And I think combining that sort of Souls-like combat, which traditionally I'm not a big Souls fan of those games, but combining that combat, which is always visually interesting to me, with a sort of slightly more kind of adventure and cartoony aesthetic, I think is just a really nice mix. It really caught my attention. So long as it feels good to play, then I will be, more than happy to give it a go. And speaking of which, that's exactly what we're about to do. So tonight, for the second part of System Link, we're going to jump over and play for the first time a bit of Another Crab's Treasure live on stream this evening. So we're going to just do a quick switch out, get ourselves ready for that. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Thank you, everyone. Please stick with us, because in just 2 or 3 minutes' time, we'll be back shortly with our first ever. I've not played it at all. I've not even booted it up yet. So there'll be like menu stuff to work through and configuration to do at the start. So it'll be truly a first-time playthrough. We'll be getting with that very shortly. Mike, thank you again for our first sort of part one, our discussion tonight. It was kind of very, very truthful, I think, which feels good to kind of exercise that a little bit. Folks, so bear with us 2 minutes. We'll be back with some Another Crab's Treasure. And we are back. So here we are, folks. This is another Crab's Treasure. I'm playing on Series X right now via Game Pass. We're just going to dive in, just to prove this is truly the first time I'm playing this. We're literally at the start screen right now, loading into a new game. Let's just dive in.
Yeah,
see what it's
great.
like.
What word comes to mind when you think of the Earth? For some, that word might be beautiful. Others might say the world is hateful, or evil, or unstable, or full of shit.
Hoping there's
But
deep
above all
backstory
else,
to this.
the word that best describes our world is resilient. Against the odds, time and time again, creatures adapt to make the most of their given environment.
And now,
Some learn to feed
crab
on
with a
others,
weapon.
stealing their vitality for their own. Some become scavengers, living off what strangers leave behind. And others still, as we will soon see, would prefer to be simply left alone.
Sir, please open up.
Oh, you're not a bird.
Sir,
Voice
are
acting?
you the owner of this residence?
You mean my shell? Yeah, it's mine.
That crab's been huffing
Do
paint.
you like it?
I represent the Royal Duchy of Slacktide, which has recently annexed the territory surrounding and including this tide pool. I'm here to inform you that you have outstanding taxes that date back in upwards of 10 tides. If you are
I like his little
presently
hat.
unable to pay this balance,
For sure,
the
the
Duchy
hat's
will
charming,
claim
isn't
you
it?
home until you...
Hold on. I've got some questions. First of all, what's a duchy? Also, taxes.
Okay, so basically, the
Krill's
Duchess
voice
of
is so
Slacktide owns
strained.
this
He's
whole
so
area.
stressed already.
It's painful to listen
Puts a lot
to.
of effort into keeping it safe. So everyone who benefits from that has to abide by her rules and pay up once
Big
per
Manny, I
time.
love this already.
There's
Yeah, oh my
still
god, it's a
plenty of
loan
words
shark.
here. I don't know if it's
Absolutely.
really safe.
Really charming
Kid,
character
I
design.
don't have time to argue political nuances.
Hey, don't worry
here.
about it,
I've
man.
got a lot of tax evaders to get to. You gotta pay up right now, or I'm gonna have to repo your property. Got it?
Okay. I think I've got a hard kelp or two around here somewhere.
I don't know why I appreciate that, but move legs as the button prompt is a nice sort of a nice little touch rather than just
Yeah.
move. Move your legs. Oh, look at him. Found your stash of heart kelp. Everyone loves these delicious heart kelp pods, so they're often used for trading. Eating just one of these makes you feel restored. Acknowledge knowledge.
Looks nice. Pretty slick.
Yep.
Menus and stuff are decent.
Yep, nice and smooth and minimal UI as well, which I appreciate. How interesting that they've got the sort of Banjo-Kazooie gibberish speak and then fully voiced cutscenes as well.
Yeah.
Plugsocket is asking about your car's extended warranty. Yep, your shell's extended warranty. Absolutely, Chris. They're heart kelp pods. Don't tell me you don't even like heart kelp. Don't be joking. No one uses those dumb things as money anymore. The ocean's moved to the trash standard now. Trash, you got it? Trash. It's like no pearls either, no shiny pirate coins. That's right, none of that crap. See, you better find some bread clips and some sauce packets back there. I'm losing my damn patience. Look, if you don't just give me a couple more tides. Alright, I've had enough. Say goodbye to your shell, idiot.
Wait.
I feel like this would work really well if you fully committed to the voices.
Yes, I agree. Oh, he looks really like... He's sort of incomplete. Yeah, Plugsocket, definite banjo vibes for this. This does feel like a sort of Don't you think? It gives it that sort of, you know, the... Just here's a sort of sandbox area. You got your little character.
Nice pun.
I'm guessing I've got to go and chase him over here. Well, I love the way he sprints. That's delightful. Now, I talk about feel a lot in games. It's a nice punchy jump as well. So just, so far so good. Good feel. I think you're right. I think it'd be nice if it was fully voiced. Especially these bits.
It's a lot to ask.
Yeah.
To ask. I think it's fine.
Naruto run. You want your shell back? You better go get a job, pay up. Here they're always hiring the reef. The reef, isn't it super busy there? I don't want to talk to people. Again, not really my problem. I don't care where you get the trash from, but I'm keeping this until you do. Multiple crabs. Okay, so you have kind of a limited sort of a swim at the moment. Guessing that's something you could potentially... I know that there's some character upgrades and stuff you can get. I do like his sort of flappy spin. Yeah, the animation's great.
Yeah.
More platforming, actually, than I was expecting in this. Oh, no. I feel like I should be able to make that. Yeah, look at that. Pro gamer, that's what you're tuning in for. Burly Bird Media. System Link. Bread claw. A small chunk of plastic in the shape of a crab's claw. Maybe it has some value. Trade it for 250 microplastics. Excellent. Oh, another crabby. Oh, it's another crab. Excuse me, sir. Did you see a really tall shark pass by carrying a super awesome dope-looking shell? Work. That's what I'm trying to not do. That's why I got to catch up with the worthless. Holy crap, what's wrong with your eyes? You been sleeping enough or... Oh, God, get away from me. Oh, God. Oh, God. Well, this is stressful. Appreciate that one crab with his, like, claw raised sideways. That's a nice...
The little touches are great.
Yeah.
And the writing's really nice.
Am I to assume, do you reckon I'm just supposed to be running down here? Just kind of, there's too many of them, isn't there? For me to be getting my fight on. Jesus. I think I lost them by climbing 3 feet. Well, a game with art direction. Yeah, to be fair, it does have a very sort of specific style to it, doesn't it? It's a very slightly exaggerated look, which I really appreciate. I want to see what that is up there. This is where I often take, like, 8 years to complete a game, because I then meander and just want to, I've got to unpack everything. Couldn't hurt to have a way to defend myself. The thing seems like you do a little damage. If anyone else attacks me, I guess I'll poke him with the pokey bit. Might as well give this bad boy a few practice swings. Found a rusty fork. Very sort of, very Dark Souls. I'm determined. That's great. I know I should move on. I know this is killing the pace of the stream. I just want to know if I can get up there. Could be something I come back to, of course.
Maybe you need a move upgrade.
Yeah, potentially. Focus. I was hoping there was a lock on. I was just thinking that. Press the right stick to focus on enemies, keeping the camera locked onto them. It's really useful for fighting, so don't forget about it. Why can't I do my move now? Oh, that's because I was pressing the wrong button. I like this stance that my character's in now, the sort of with the claws held high.
It's so cute.
It's great. Didn't know if those were collectibles. I think that's just an effect. Tap B right as an enemy attacks to dodge out of the way. The timing takes some practice, but dodging successfully can avoid most damage. Nice. Ah, I was about to say I was a pro. And then I fucked it up. That's one thing I also really like. Not all games do this with a dodge move, where you can dodge forwards. A lot of games let you go sideways or back, but they don't let you do a forward roll.
Yeah.
And that's something I always like. I like to back away and then jump in and attack. Especially in games like that. So that's a nice touch. Plugsocket, if there's one thing I struggle with, it's making tutorial screens. I can never get them right. How does this game do them so well? You know what it is? It integrates it with the gameplay. It makes... Oh, hello. Look at this cheeky little piddler.
They're nice and short, aren't they, as well?
Yes, they're not overstaying their welcome. Which is, I think, really, really important. That looks like something I could break over there. Oh, nice. I collected some things. I don't know what they are yet. Don't want this to get too bogged down in sort of like, you know, the collectibles aren't very distinct. That's one thing, you know, look at something like Banjo or even the Conker games, you know, they're very, very distinct. You know, the musical notes, the jigsaw pieces, the honeycombs. I don't think the collectibles in this have been very distinct so far. It's quite difficult to differentiate them.
Yeah, well, they need to tell you what they're for. Still lacking that bit of
Yeah, maybe I can rest
information.
my feet here for a little while. Oh, this is like a little checkpointy bit. Moon snail shells. Touch these glowing currents to restore a long-forgotten moon snail shell, which you can rest in to restore your health. If you're slain, you revive the last one you stayed in, so be sure to activate every one you can. Okay, great. So a little checkpoint. Cave of Respite. Microplastics and leveling up. So the power present in moon snail shells will allow you to purge microplastics from yourself, gaining strength in the process. However, certain folks might be interested in trading for your extra microplastics, so you might want to consider saving some. Okay. Oh, so I don't have enough, do I?
Very straightforward leveling, which is good.
Yeah. It's, you know, it's damage of base attacks, damage of physical strikes. Okay. Shell collection. Oh, great. Okay. Oh, Jesus. So much to go through. Okay. But I don't have enough. I'm guessing that 75 is my... That's the microplastics, I think. Which is what I'm using for upgrades.
Yeah.
There you are. Well, you're awful persistent. I think I've been pretty clear with you, kid. The shell's the property of the Duchess now. If you want it back, take it up with her, not me. My work is done here. Come on, man. It's gotta be something I can do. Yeah, now that you mention it, I can think of something. You can lick my freaking ventral fins and stop bothering me. Bah! Later, kid. Ah, this guy. Oh, bit of frame rate wonkiness there. Hey, friend.
A friend.
A snail. Whoa, don't you see your type leaving the tide... I've just decided he's a bit of a stoner. Whoa, man, don't you do type leaving the tide pool too often? Yeah, well, I didn't... no, that's that's a different character. Yeah, well, I didn't have a choice. You tell me what's going on here. I heard that's like a Duchess in charge now. Yeah, sure is, man. Real piece of work. Takes all my hard-earned microplastic every time just for existing. What do I see for a nut? Just keep burning out cars and high massages. Just not even using syllables anymore. Just making noise. Oh, that's cool. Where can I find her? I think she has something in mind. Hey, pal. Hey, buddy boy. Wait a minute. Hey, pal, just look around for a moment. You'll probably figure it out. Or did you miss that huge castle in the distance? Okay, great. I'll head over there. Hopefully she can get rid of my taxes for me. Oh, I see how it is. You're some kind of freelancer, are you? Bet you think you can sketch your taxes while the rest will keep it aside, I get, yeah? Oh, I'm so tired. You just said, yeah, we crabs on the set. It's annoying me now. We're in the shells, the rest of it was worse. How to crab with the mantis. Yes, saying tap fry. Small fry? That's a great reference. We love a bit of that. That's lovely. I like the way the area name pops up. Yeah, it gives it sort of a nice permanence to it, which is really fun. I never did anything to you, man. Yeah? Well, how's about I do something to you? Oh, Jesus! What the hell?
I was going to murk you up, isn't he?
Well, I absolutely riddled his timbers. Turned him into ash. Why does everyone in this place try to kill me? This shell doesn't even fit. Alright, calm down, Krill. It's the most dangerous situation you've been in since seagull breeding season. That's awful. But all you gotta do is make it to that castle, like the rude snail said. Sounds like that Duchess controls the taxes around here, so I bet the shark took my shell to her. Sure wants to tell her what's going on. This can all be resolved and I can go straight back to sleep. What a waste of time. There's no way I'm fitting in this thing. Interesting. I wonder if that's to introduce the shell-wearing mechanic and that there will be stuff later on that you can grab. Ooh.
I'm sure, yeah. Hopefully it gives you different moves, you'd think. That would be the logical thing that the shell gives you.
Definitely some commentary about loads of cigarette butts being in the ocean floor.
Yeah, I like the message.
Yeah.
Some of us care about the planet.
Oh, got some crabbies. Oh, okay. I need to get a little better with my dodging.
Need some health. How do you get your health back? Does it recharge?
It was a D-pad up. There you go. I think I've got the bottom right 2 health heart things. I think I've been collecting that as a resource. Massive area. Appreciate the scale and the jaunty music. That's where I'm heading, isn't it? Over to the castle.
You're the crab.
Absolutely. Big Manny, does this game have lore? I think so, yeah. I think the story's pretty elaborate, actually. More so than I thought it was going to be. I didn't know if that was climbable. Yeah, more so than I thought. Actually, there's a lot more going on here. Appreciate the spade. Not something that's breakable. Little sort of shanty market going on here. Oh, hello. Oh, what the hell's this? Oh, yeah. That's right. Crab expert. I love elaborate stories. Yeah, I think this is going to end up being quite, you know, it's got quite a simple premise. You know, you've had your shell stolen by the tax man. That's bread claw. Still not sure what that is yet. And you got to go and get it back. Nice and simple. You think the environments may be a bit sparse? Or am I being
yeah, I was
hard
thinking,
on it? You know, I'm hoping for some variation here because this bit's really awkward. Because I think we are missing a little bit of variation to that. Oh, no, I'm never gonna make that. Bloodstar limb. A severed limb of a bloodstar, easily regenerated by the host creature. Collect 4 more to increase vitality. I appreciate being able to interrupt attacks as well. That's really handy. Something I'm always grateful for in something like this.
Yeah, combat looks great.
Is that a slightly bigger boy? Ooh. Ah! A watery grave. 2 hits and I'm out. God, that was...
Yeah.
That's
right. What we're here to see.
Hey, true playthrough. You died. When you are slain, you'll drop all your microplastics and your shell if you had one in the spot where you died. Be careful when you go to pick them up. If you die again while they're still on the ground, they'll be lost forever. Okay, so you get like a 1 shot to get them back.
Bit of backtracking as well.
Yep, at the checkpoint. I'm wondering actually if they might have... again, a weird frame rate moment. I'm wondering if there's been a moment where like I might have missed another checkpoint area. Potentially. I know where I'm going now.
I mean, the movement speed is quite fast, but just given the lack of environmental detail, have the backtrack is a bit frustrating.
Oh, for goodness sake. Come on. There we go. Now this guy, he's a wiggler.
Glitching all over the shop, isn't he?
He's loving that sandal. There we go. No chance. I want to get the stuff. Didn't know if that was something I could wear. Another piddler.
Looks like your style.
Sparkly and redundant. Big Manny, at least this isn't Dark Souls 2 where you get an achievement for dying. Yeah, that's true. Okay, there's my stuff. Alright, so I got to take on Krabby McGee's up here. I gotta make sure I don't screw this up. Ugh!
You pick your stuff up before you
Yeah, potentially.
kill them.
Let's go do that. Yeah, there you go. Whew. Oh, Jesus. I can target switch that. I do like flicking the stick to target switch when games do that as well.
Yeah.
That's a nice touch. Oh, there you
Definitely.
go. Big boy's gone. Ah. There you go. Killed his little piddler. You get quite a range on the heavy attack. There's quite a jump on it when it comes forward. There you go. Cool, that's looking a bit hefty over there. Obviously circling something useful. Also something looks like there's on there as well.
Always hard to know whether you're supposed to engage this stuff at this stage, or if you're supposed to. Well, like, will he be coming back here later when you've got better stats?
Oh man, where's my dodge?
They love these sandals, don't they? These little.
Yeah.
Slippers.
They love glitching on a sandal. Oh. I appreciate that he got locked into like a he got locked into like a brute throwing a grenade animation there from Halo. I want to see what these things are. Now come on, that's pretty great. Can't argue with that. Ooh. Ooh. I couldn't charge my heavy attack mid-air there, so I'm wondering if there might be again a move you unlock, like a sort of downward strike, if there's sort of more verticality in the game later on. Come on, friend.
Yeah.
Oh. Oh, yeah, piddler. Those big boys, if you mistime that, they can mash me up.
Need a checkpoint, don't you?
Well, yeah, ideally, I've taken on so many of them. I've actually got enough, it looks like, for an upgrade too now, as well. So I think that is a checkpoint up ahead.
Yeah.
I think that's looking favourite. Hello, Wanderer. I'm going to make him super British. Haven't seen you town before. On the way to offer tribute to your lovely Duchess, I suppose. I guess, maybe. Well, take it from me. The more you suck up to the Duchess, the better your life in slack tide will be. As I always say, a happy habitat needs a happy autocrat. Well, that's jolly. Don't ignore him. Yeah, can't get me in here, can ya? Glitching through the wall. These ones are glitchy as hell.
Big glitch fish.
Glitch fish. Yeah, there we go. So I can put something in here.
Yeah.
So this is increase the amount of health, decrease the damage your shell takes, enhances damage of physical strikes. Umami-based attack. I don't know what that means yet. Guess that's something I'm going to unlock later. So I'm thinking I might just go health. Give myself just a little bump.
Yeah, I was going to say.
There we go. I appreciate also the messages behind, purge your plastics to get an upgrade.
Definitely. It's Sir David Attenborough's birthday today.
Well, there you go. You'll be celebrating with a bit of another crab's treasure.
That's why you're streaming this, isn't it? In his honour.
That was my thinking. Yeah, for sure. You know me.
I wouldn't come on the podcast, but
he's too busy saving crabs. Okay, approaching the gate to the castle. What the fuck are these things?
Halt, trespasser. By order of the Duchess, all suspicious characters are to be barred from Slacktide.
Suspicious? I thought I looked pretty harmless. Downright adorable. Huggable, even.
Perhaps you speaketh truth, vagrant, but I shan't no grantest thou entry twixt these mighty gates whilst thy loins remain ungirded.
Now, I did that in a oneer. That wasn't bad. Shocking scares me. Desperate for this to be R-rated, aren't they? They desperately want to push the content on this thing.
Do take a hint. She's saying you're naked.
Oh, yeah. Guess I hadn't thought about that. Is that important these days? I feel like society's really moved on without me while having to practice... Oh, fuck that up. I feel like society's really moved on without me while I've been... Fucking learn words. I feel like society's really moved on without me while I've been practicing self-care. There we go. Jesus, how hard was that?
Sure seems like it. The Duchess would have no heads if we let you in wearing nothing but a rag.
Fret not, little crustacean. Nearby to the east lieth a repository laden with complimentary garmentry.
Nice.
I could do a line like that, but that sounds good. Face the gate and turn right, and you'll find a charity centre where you can get something to wear. Our captain's stationed there right now, I think. Great guy. He'll get you sorted. Sounds cool. And then you'll let me in?
What, helpful lobsters?
Yeah, absolutely. Assuming nothing sketchy comes up with your background check, sure. Well, thanks, friends. Well, I am happy to pause it there, just so we've kind of explored this opening section. This is something I've really enjoyed doing on stream. I think I might come back around to this in the next Burly Bird Live, potentially. What a great, advert for Game Pass this little game is. Really good fun.
I'm going to give it a go as well, I think. That's cool.
Oh, really? Nice. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that will about do it for us tonight for our second ever episode of System Link. Just going to swap us back out to our podcast view. There we go. So, Mike, thank you again for jumping on the stream tonight. This has been it's been lovely to unpack all of the shit news that we were discussing this evening.
I had a lot on my chest from the news over the last couple of days. So it's been good to vent. Sure.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone so much for tuning in and for sticking with us this evening. Chat's been really lively again tonight, so it is much appreciated. Just want to give a quick shout out to a change that we've put in place for our upcoming next Burly Bird Live. We're going to be moving that to a Monday night at 9 PM. So currently we have it on a Tuesday evening, day before System Link, but we want to spread things out a little bit. So we're going to have our next Burly Bird Live. And just off the back of that tonight, I can confirm I'll be playing some Another Crab's Treasure again, because I really enjoyed jumping into that with you guys live on stream. So please consider jumping in, checking that out over at twitch.tv/burlybirdmedia, and that will be up on Mondays at 9 PM. And of course, System Link will be continuing as it has done this evening, next Wednesday, once again at 9 PM, here at twitch.tv/burlybirdmedia. So, thank you again, everyone, for tuning in. It is very much appreciated, your support. So we had a couple follows there as well during the stream. So again, every little helps. We, I think, now are 6 followers away from reaching that final metric on affiliate. So we're getting close, baby. We're nearly there. Thank you again, everyone, for jumping in. Oh, thank you, Dave. I really appreciate that. Please do, if you get a chance, please consider just sharing any of our stuff that goes up either on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, any of those places if you're following us. You can find us in all those places at Burly Bird Media. So please do consider checking us out and going there. If you can, shout about us, spread the good word. That, of course, would always be appreciated. Thank you again, everyone. Mike, thank you once more for jumping on tonight's show, and we will see you next time.
Thanks all. Have a good one.